welcome. This is Gloria Gunn with Link Sherpa and the Self-Fluencer Slack group. And I've got with me a very special guest, very, very excited. I am going to introduce Matthew Newnham. But before I do, I wanted to just, let's just go ahead and introduce you. Hi, Matthew.
Hi, Gloria.
Yeah. I was going to give this long spiel, right? But we're going to get into that, so there's really no need to do that. So Matthew, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and yeah.
Okay, thank you, Gloria. So what I do is I help people to find, typically kind of coaches and entrepreneurs and consultants, and help them to find where they're really their most awesome, finding insights that are not obvious to them or reconfirming some aspects, so we can really position them and their business for the best effect so they can serve at the highest level, and also so we can really get a great message out there that doesn't require any hype but tells a much more powerful, engaging version of the truth, because you know the old thing about the truth is better than fiction.
Yeah.
And I've got some tools and insights that, you know, I think I can legitimately say they're unique, because obviously we've had a chat and
yes.
You won't find this stuff elsewhere. And I've just been very fortunate that these have come together in a way that really clicks nicely with people, you know?
Yeah. And I think that goes really nicely, you know, with the whole avatar thing. And I think it's really important because after like talking and coaching and, you know, onboarding, just all different types of businesses, I'm blown away by how little we know about our, you know, who our target market is and our customer. And I think that's really important. But now, Matthew, you take that a little bit further. You kind of turn it up on its head and take it a little bit further. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So like one of the things, I'll just maybe take half a step back as well, because I think, like you, values are really just so vital, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like they're kind of worth reiterating for people who are perhaps new and don't know us yet or what have you.
Yes.
So there's a couple of things. One is that you and I, we just click so well because we believe fervently in serving at the highest level in a very ethical way, right?
Yes, exactly.
And so that includes things like, you know, we all want to do well, but we want to do well by doing good. Well, we do anyway. And the people around us, they want to do that. And so that brings us to a kind of natural question. Well, how do you do well? Because when we're kind of taught marketing and sales and the rest of business building, there's a whole bunch of stuff in this mixed bag, some of which makes you feel like, ew, I don't think I want to do that. It doesn't feel right for me, right?
Exactly.
And let's be honest, there is a lot of kind of guff out there that it feels kind of borderline, it feels manipulative and stuff like that. And that's just not us at all. And we pull away from that, where some people, they kind of wrestle with it for a while and they're not sure, which is legitimate, okay? So that's a strong thing for us, and we connected very strongly on that with our conversations. And then the other thing that I know we agree on is most of what we kind of see and hear and are taught out there comes across as one-size-fits-all solutions. You know, you should do this, or no, you should. And you're thinking, well, hang on a minute. That worked for them with their situation, their skill set, their knowledge, their context, and their personality.
Right.
And so what a surprise. I mean, you have taught and coached so many people, and what a surprise that you find that they're going, wow, Gloria, I'm struggling here because I don't know how to make that stuff work for me, right? And so what you and I are about is tuning more into the individuals and finding things that are going to serve them. And then I guess I would end with one other fundamental, and then answer your question, get to the question, right? And then one other thing is, again, this is a kind of fortunate thing between you and me, because the way our personalities work is we believe in strong fundamentals.
Right.
We don't want to juggle 50 dozen different things, do we? You want to find a few things, as few things as you need that are really strong, that help you build a business and keep growing it and not have to go back and redo stuff, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So that's really the spirit in which we are here today. And you know, our ongoing involvement and my delight in being in your community is because that's what we're about, right?
Yeah, Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that's a big point. And because with the stuff that we're going to be talking about today, and the whole exercise and the avatar thing, you can use it for the dark side as well as as well as good. And it's really important to always kind of keep that in check. And a lot of times, I think people, I guess they could be swayed, depending on where their mindset and stuff is. So it's really important to always kind of keep that in check and I think if you do that, if you learn these techniques that you're going to be sharing with us today with the mindset of, I am going to use this for good. I am going to use this to help people, truly help people to the best of my ability. What ends up happening automatically is that all of a sudden, you attract business. It's really true. You tend to attract that business. People are, they're kind of seeking that light in a dark world, if you will.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. And I know from kind of, watching your work over the years and bought your training products, you're big on the know, like, and trust factor. Mm-hmm. And that has to be genuine, right?
Yes.
Like I've got another friend who said once, gosh, it was like 8 or 9 years ago, we were having a chat, we were doing kind of coaching with clients and stuff. And he says to me during a break, he says, we should never forget that people can read you on all kinds of levels.
That's so true. Yeah.
And I guess you could put it in kind of parentheses, even if they don't realize that that's what they're reading, And so like you say, we got to come from the right place here, the right mindset, and then they'll be picking up on this. It's like kind of dogs and cats, they can read us. Well, we can read people. We just don't know that we're reading very well. Sometimes you might go, oh, I could never do that. Well, somewhere inside us, it kind of gets that. Mm-hmm. And so what we're talking about, like you say, is we're talking about making genuine connections, building true trusted relationships, and sticking with people, not just trying to quickly sell them something and run away.
Right. That's exactly right. So kind of getting back and peeling back the layers of this whole avatar thing.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the one size fits all. Typically what we teach is, you have to know your target market. And the reason why you have to know your target market is, you need to know their pains, their fears, their wants, needs, and so on and so forth. What's your take on that?
Great question. So, like many of us, I went through kind of copywriting school and you get taught this stuff, right? And I thought, oh, wow, that just makes so much sense. And as you go through your journey, you pick up a few kind of key distinctions. And so one of them, and I'm aware, I really would love to go in and directly answer your question, but I'm trying to put down these fundamentals as we go as well, okay? Yeah. So one of them is, you mentioned rightly, the point of avatars is so we know kind of the pain points and the fears and the wants and the needs and aspirations. And when I think about that, there's one word that jumps out that I learned about kind of, 9 years ago, that I'm going to gently set to one side, and that word is needs.
Interesting. Okay.
It's a really great thing to want to address people's needs. But here's the distinction where we've got to be really careful with our ethics here too. I have thought about this for, decades, but when you're in the business world, you take on a new set of meaning around things. You go, okay, how do I apply it here?
Right.
Have you ever met somebody, Gloria, that for, over the course of time, even if it's just for a week, have you ever met anybody who does things that they don't want to do for very long?
Yeah, they typically, no. I mean, it's like, do I have to do it? Yes, they have to do it. It's like, taking bad medicine that you don't like the taste of or something. But what happens is as soon as they can, I think it's a human condition, we tend to at least subconsciously do everything we can to avoid that.
Yep. By contrast, would it be fair to say that when we really boil it down, pretty much all of us, what we're really doing is doing what we want, even if that lines up with what we need?
Yes, That's so true. And personally, just as a result of our, what we did last week, when that is in alignment, I mean, I have noticed that I tend to be more focused, more motivated, more, action, task oriented to get things done, where before it was, it was really like pulling teeth, and it was just like, oh gosh, and I'm procrastinating and stuff like that. So tell us a little bit about that. That's so true. Want and need in alignment, but how do we even get there? Because sometimes it's really hard.
It is. Well, here's the kind of the incentive, if you like. For really good, noble reasons, most of us, hopefully all of us, I guess, in a way, who are in the helping people types of businesses, and frankly, what business isn't about helping people ultimately, right?
That's right, yeah.
Most of us probably started off thinking, oh, I'll find out what people need and I'll try and provide that. And that sounds so good until you kind of think to yourself, wait a sec. If people don't really do what they need, but they do what they want, then I was having a chat 9 years ago with this friend of mine who he had given this he's a fantastic public speaker, and he's a really, really great coach and an entrepreneur. And there was a kind of business gathering. There was 300 of us in the room. He gave this fantastic talk, and he and I were having a chat afterwards because we knew each other. And we were talking about what had happened because of the global financial crisis, which had just happened the year before, and we're still in the depths of it in 2009. And he said, you know what? There's stuff that I used to be able to sell it for hundreds or even thousands, like $5,000. I can barely give it away today. That's how much the market has turned on us. Mm-hmm. Wow, what do you do? And he goes, well, I'll tell you what really kind of came to me, and it was a hard lesson, but it was like invaluable. He says, my business went from 6 figures to 7 figures when I finally realized, stop trying to sell people what they need and actually give them what they want. Now, here's where the ethics come in big time. He says, if your dog is ill, if it's sick and you need to give it medicine, how do you give medicine to a dog? He says, well, you kind of have 3 choices. You could put the pill down in the bowl, and good luck with that, because what's a dog going to do? It's going to ignore it, isn't it? Or push it around, try and push it out of the bowl. Method number 2 is you try to gently put the pill on its tongue and see if it'll swallow. They don't like it.
That's right.
And the only method that works is you find the lovely kind of thing that they love, whether it's a meatball or whatever, put the pill deep inside that, and they'll gladly eat it. So he says, you don't want to ignore what people need to the best of your understanding, but you've got to meet them where they are with what they want, and then also provide what they need. And I thought, well, that's beautiful, because now we can remain in our highest ethics, but be practical. There's no point trying to go, oh, I think you need this, and people go, hang on a minute. Now, another way of saying that is, context always matters, The context is, because I was trying to rush and get to pick up my child from childcare, and I'm worried because whatever, right? We want their life to be better. And we're not trying to solve all of their life's problems, but we want to do it within the context of who they are and what do they want to be, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So I guess that's where sometimes avatars can fall short of that. But let's say that we didn't even fall short. The real issue is we are doing our best to try and create this amalgam of a situation of a made-up person we made up, the avatar of one person.
Look, can we kind of do this makeshift avatar right now so that we have time?
Absolutely. We can either create one, or you can just tell me one that you got from a recent exercise. We can play either way.
Okay, so I did one, and I called him Dr. Joe. He's a dentist, and that was one that I did in that avatar course as an example. So I called him Dr. Joe. He's a dentist, mid-40s, just, basically he's got probably the nuclear family, a couple of kids, high school age-ish, has here in the U.S. has a lot of debt from going to, dental school, and has worked for other practices, and for whatever reason decided, I'm going to go out on my own. So he's got his own practice, very busy seeing patients. He's not an administrator. And, he's got to deal with the whole, the U.S. like dental insurance and what, the price points. He's got to have a highly skilled staff, right? He's got to have dental hygienists, dental assistants, an administrative staff. He's got all this equipment. And he's got a situation to where in the U.S. there's like a dentist, every shopping center basically.
Of course.
The competition is crazy. And usually, he's thinking, I went to dental school. I'm not really a marketer. So let's use Dr. Joe as an example. So what he's noticing is, not only are the what the insurance are imposing in terms of what he can charge, but he's also noticing that he is slowly losing market share, that there are, other dentists in town that seem to have mastered the marketing game and the reviews and all that. So he's noticed a decline. The waiting room is not as busy as it was, right? The phone's not ringing as much as it. Now he's still making a living, but so you might look at that and say, where's the pain, right? There's really no pain. He has a functioning business. So let's start with Dr. Joe, just to give some context.
Fabulous. That's great. Thank you, Gloria, for that. Because as you're painting that picture, I'm putting myself into his shoes, as I'm sure you know, right? So you're going to have thoughts, but also you're going to have a lot of emotions if you're Dr. Joe.
Yes.
And then I came up with this I always ask myself questions. It's slightly strange that way. I have this internal dialogue, right?
Right.
And I thought, alrighty, let's pretend that is absolutely correct. And it sounds perfect to me. You probably wouldn't, let's say that you decided that, you were going to put a fair amount of effort with your business to help Dr. Joe and others like him. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You'd want to have more than one Dr. Joe in America.
That's right.
Otherwise, man, Dr. Joe is going to have a deep budget for you to be able to have a business just serving one client. So let's just imagine, I know one of the fabulous concepts that you present to the group, which I think is spot on, is you want to have 1,000 true fans.
Yeah.
So let's just imagine there's at least 1,000 Dr. Joes in America. And I'm sure there are. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably a pretty kind of an educated guess. What do you think the odds are that every one of those 1,000 have the identical personality?
No way. No way. They may have some similar characteristics, maybe logical thinkers or critical thinkers, mm-hmm. Left brain versus right brain. But for them to have identical personalities, no way.
Just couldn't happen, could it?
Mm-hmm.
And we know from, various kind of sales and marketing kind of trainings over the years, we know that people buy with emotion and then they justify with their logic.
That's right.
So if they're not identical, they couldn't possibly have the same emotional or logical reasons for buying. They couldn't be identical, could they?
That's right.
So now we think, we have this fantastic avatar, but we at Houston, we have a problem because they're not all the same people.
That's right. Yeah.
What do we do about that? And that's the point of the next layer down.
Yes.
So without, and I'm not a psychologist, but without kind of, like you say, going woo or too deep kind of theoretically, the next practical layer down is, what is it that drives our emotions and our thinking? It's fundamentally our personality type.
Yeah.
And so the answer to this, to go further, to keep our avatar, but make it even more vital, is to get a sense of, well, what kind of personality types do you think we might be dealing with here? How do we get a handle on that that's easy to understand, accessible for us to work with, and again, 100% ethical? We're not talking mind probe here. We're not talking weird, Cambridge Analytica data, squirrely stuff. None of that.
Right. Nice,
clean, ethical practice here from our own desktops. So that's the question. And luckily, I've been doing this for 10 years. Yes. Give you the answer.
I was going to say, yes, we're waiting with bated breath for the answer here, right?
So here's the thing, and I'm just going to give this a caveat, because when I was thinking about this stuff, back in kind of 2006, I was working in the corporate world, And I got reintroduced, if you like, to the idea of personality profiling. And I have to say, back then, I didn't want it at all. Because in my experience, especially in the corporate world, personality profiling is used to pigeonhole you.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll say, well, you know what, Fred, you should be an accountant. Or you're never going to be creative, Sally. You need to do something else, whatever, right? And that's all it does. It tries to pin you down, says, here's what you might be able to do, and here's what you shouldn't be able to do. Well, wow, what a motivational message that is. And the other thing is, it was too kind of binary. So most of us, if we've done any personality tests in the past, what they'll say is that fundamentally, are you an introvert or are you an extrovert? Are you this or are you that?
Mm-hmm.
How many people have you ever met where they're just neatly one thing or another?
That's right. Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, and I you know, it's I think that Myers-Briggs, where that's kind of a common one that a lot of people know.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. You're either like when I did that years ago, I was almost like equal with, I had the capability to be in all quadrants pretty equal.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Where
what
does that lead
that
you?
mean? Yeah, exactly. It's just, what does that do? What does that mean, right?
And we wouldn't, as marketers and business owners, and because we all need to be, like Dr. Joe, we need to be marketers to be in business.
Right.
We have to on some level, and salespeople for that matter, because the same stuff applies to sales, ethical sales, where we have a genuine conversation.
Yep.
So, so that polarity stuff has got real limitations to it. Plus, who wants to be pigeonholed, by the way?
That's right.
What a horrible way to have a relationship. We don't want to do that to anybody, and we don't want it done to us. So anyway, I encountered basically the kind of root source for all of our Western personality stuff comes from China, thousands of years ago. And this is a matter of historical fact, by the way. There's no woo-woo to this whatsoever, just so everybody can relax who watches this later on.
Right.
In about 5,000 years ago, the Chinese were observing kind of how nature operated because, we see it all around us, obviously, with the seasons and so on and so forth. Now, some people might recognize that that is the part of the roots of Kung Fu, for example. The movements were modeled on how animals move, but also they related to the seasons and learning how to flow with nature.
Mm-hmm.
What people don't know is that that was extended to a very rigorous system of thought that they used for government, for their agriculture, for their business, politics, daily life and relationships. Everything was basically run through this set of observations that they created. Now, for the first kind of 1,500 years or so, they did base it on yin and yang and this polarity-based view of the world. And when that knowledge eventually came to the West in the 1920s, that was what got picked up upon, which is why all the modern kind of personality stuff that came from Carl Jung, who had worked with Freud before that, that's the version we got in the West. But
so it's sort of a diluted version is what you're saying.
It is. They didn't get the latest version of of the rule book, as it were. And there was a great debate in China, in ancient China, about this. They said, this polarity stuff, it doesn't seem like there's something wrong here. There's something missing. And they thought, well, actually, it's not as cut and dry as that. And what they developed was actually there are 5 what they call energy types, which correspond a little bit more in a more nuanced way to how the seasons actually work. And what they observed is these 5 energies show up in people, they show up in the seasons, they show up in, what kind of country are you in? It's in a particular phase at this moment, the economy is in a particular phase, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And so at this point, somebody might go, really? And I've gone through all these questions in my mind too. So I thought,
can I share, but while you're doing this, because honestly, when you first approached me with it, and I'm half Asian too, and I believe in, like natural healing and all that type of stuff, and, ancient, the Eastern thought process and medicine and everything. And, I was just kind of like, this just sounds really over the top, but I'll play. But I was really blown away at how applicable it really is. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because
Yeah.
at about this point, I was really, when we were kind of having our back and forth, I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. I'm not a true believer yet is is where I was coming from. So just for everybody that's going to see this video, sorry about that. I just had to share my experience with that.
I think that's invaluable. I love entertaining the kind of devil's advocate or skeptical point of view, because that's where we get some really rich information and great conversations flowing. Mm-hmm. It's entirely natural to go, really? And so I had all these questions in my mind that I kind of just walked through and answered one at a time. So starting with this idea of, wait a sec, you tell us that we're all kind of different. Really? I thought, well, hang on a minute. If you look at kind of babies or young children, they, before they have a chance to learn anything from anybody, they show up differently. Like some of them are night owls, some of them, they sleep all day. Going, okay, so I guess we're not all clones of each other waiting to be programmed by life's events, right?
That's right.
So there must be some differences which are there from the moment we're born. So I'll take that as a starting point. And then you could say, well, the other thing is if you could have people who go through identical experiences, but obviously they process it differently and they have different responses years later. Okay, that's another way in which we illustrate we ain't all the same. We all obviously there's something inside us beyond just what happens. And this goes back to that classic thing, nature versus nurture. Mm-hmm. It's not one or the other, it's both. Mm-hmm. But we don't want to disregard our inner true nature as well, which is our personality makeup, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where I kind of got to as a grounding point. And then I thought to myself, okay, as I learned more about how the Chinese had done this, I think, if somebody's been doing this and practicing it for 5,000 years, they got to be really, really off base to have got that much stuff wrong.
Right. That's
it's kind of hard to ignore that much knowledge and practice, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If it had been a flash in the pan for 10 years or even a century, you might go, haha, whatever. So you mentioned Chinese medicine. Traditional Chinese medicine incorporates this philosophy as well. But what happened, because humans are humans, after about kind of 2,500, 3,500 years, there was a lot of infighting because there were a lot of wars in ancient China like any place else. And the knowledge got driven underground and it shrank to the point where most of it resided within traditional Chinese medicine. And a lot of it had been forgotten, like, those scrolls were burnt and so on and so forth, like the Library of Alexandria in Greece, that sort of thing. And then during the Cultural Revolution in China in the 60s, that destroyed a lot of the remaining knowledge as well because it was forbidden. Mm-hmm. So enter my friend and business partner, Nicholas Haynes, who, we're all wired to kind of be gravitating towards certain things. Nick went to California from the UK here. He was born up in England and Scotland. And he went to California basically to hang out and surf and just try and kind of escape his childhood and find his life. And he encountered acupuncture and he thought, oh, I'll give this a whirl. And he went to acupuncture college in California, where one of his teachers kind of mentioned a few things about the 5 energies. Mm-hmm. Because actually Chinese medicine is about more than a few needles and a few herbs and pills.
Right.
It's really about your energy and how you manage what's inside you, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is news to a lot of people because they don't know that. And Nick was endlessly curious because he soon mastered, the acupuncture and the herbal remedies and so on, but he couldn't resist digging deeper and deeper into these energies. And he read all the old texts and he went to China and so on and so forth. And he saw this pattern. And so he's been spending nearly 40 years decoding this stuff, reconstituting the knowledge and putting it into practice with his, he started and it's still running over 30 years later, one of Europe's largest traditional Chinese medicine colleges. He had his own private medical practice for 35 years. Plus he's been consulting with, CEOs and small business owners and all that kind of stuff. And with personal relationships for all these years. And the stuff keeps working. Mm-hmm. The stuff that I'm talking about is the five energies. In other words, what is your personality makeup?
Yes.
And the punchline is we all have a blend, a unique blend of these five energy types, and they're recognizable traits. And here's where we can go back to things like, the personality testing we've all seen in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from the fact that the polarity thing doesn't really serve us very well, the other big issue is it says, you know what, Sally? We can tell from your personality test that next Tuesday afternoon, you're probably going to do this. Or you will always respond in such and such a way. Well, I find that pretty offensive, and I think most people would. Like, how dare you?
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, it's just wrong. And so that's not what the five energies is about. What it says is, for each of the five energy types, there are maybe a kind of handful, 6 or 8 kind of, we might have thought of them as traits, but I call them focus areas, where you might think, okay, that focus area, like creativity for one energy type we call wood energy. It might mean you're highly attracted to be really creative, or it might mean your creativity got stuck. So the real question is, given that focus area of creativity, how is it showing up for you, if at all? Another one might be control. Do you feel the need to really be exerting control everywhere and become a bit of a control freak? Or do you kind of say, no, let chaos reign free because that's how I live best? And we find people all up and down that spectrum, for example. It's not one end or the other. It's where is it showing up for you?
Right. So you could have Dr. Joe, these different dentists. One dentist can be very creative. And then you have another one, even though they kind of have the same avatar there, these are their same, because almost the avatar is like, I don't want to say circumstantial, but it's almost like their circumstance, what their current picture of their life is like, all that. But you could have a Dr. Joe that's very creative. You could have another Dr. Joe, or another dentist in America that's a control freak, basically.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, even though they have the same characteristics, their businesses might look very similar. They might have the same demographics or very similar demographics and stuff like that.
Absolutely right. So you get the same outward symptoms coming from quite a different place.
Yeah.
And even so these five energies, they've each got their names, their natural names like, water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. Even if all 1,000 of these Dr. Joes were purely wood energy and nothing else. Mm-hmm. Well, the question is really, how is it showing up for each one of them? Because we've always said you can get 1,000 wood energy people in the room, and they're not all going to be identical to each other. And that's because of their background, the fact that they were different anyway. Mm-hmm. And what's happening with it? Are they in distress? Did they get stuck? Are they tired? Are they ill? Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Now, we don't want to overcomplicate this. But what we do is we say, it turns out that each one of these five energies is really, it has one question that runs on autopilot throughout our lives. And it's whether we are realizing it's happening or not, this question informs our thoughts and feelings. Mm-hmm. And how we respond to it, of course, is always our free choice. And I'm a huge believer in free will. So for water energy, which you and I happen to have a lot of, if you don't mind me saying.
Yeah. Right.
We've outed each other with water energy. Is we have a question which always runs in the background, which says, am I safe and will I be safe in the future? Mm-hmm. And also there's a kind of parallel one that runs. It says, where will I end up? Which is that's the root to us asking about meaning and purpose in our life. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Tony Robbins says we all have the same 6 kind of critical, what is he called? Needs, drivers, whatever the thing is. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, no, we don't. Because that would mean we're all the same. So with water energy types like us, that need for purpose and fulfillment tends to be, doesn't have to be, but tends to be a lot stronger than the other energy types.
Right. So let's put this in practical terms. Okay, like you are an entrepreneur, a marketer. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a marketer. And even though you and I have a lot of water energy, there may be another marketer out there that might, serve really a very similar audience, businesses, other entrepreneurs and stuff like that. But that other marketer, like for you and for me, the need of finding higher purpose is, to me, it runs very deep. It's very critical that my work really, I want it to impact people for good.
Yeah.
But there may be another marketer out there, and they just might want to, and I know for you too, your purpose is like, it's got to be meaningful.
Yeah.
But there might be another marketer out there very, very similar, and they just want to sell crap. They just want to sell stuff. They just want to, let's just sell, right? So that's kind of how, I guess, in a practical term.
Yep. And so the first thing I would do, and I know you would do this as well, is we flip it on its head and we say, you know what, it's kind of not about us, it's about the customer.
Yeah.
And so if we use that question and say, all right, so we've got 1,000 Dr. Joes out there, and we'll just pretend for a minute that each of them only have one energy type. And to be honest, Nick and I, we just talk about usually no more than two at a time.
Yeah, that's right.
But we'll keep it uber simple. We'll say just one per type.
Okay, so let's just say Dr. Joe, obviously, he's got that, the top layer, what I think a lot of marketers say, so-and-so needs more customers. Dr. Joe needs more patients. So let's kind of give it that context.
Right. So all we would have to do is be mindful of these 5 big questions.
Mm-hmm.
And just say, you know what, we don't know exactly which Dr. Joes have got wood energy versus fire or earth. But if they did have wood energy, their big question is, am I free or am I heading into a trap here? So if we were trying to, set them up with a marketing system, they might say, well, yeah, I want more patients, but you know what? You're telling me I've got to post every day on social media, and frankly, that just hems me in. I'm feeling trapped already before I even started the thing. So they're going to be a lot less likely to buy from us because they see a dead-end trap. They wanted to get into it for dentistry, and they want to be creative and come up with new treatments, not doing a bunch of that.
Right. Yeah.
Somebody else, though, say a Dr. Joe with a lot of metal energy, their big question is, what's missing or incomplete? So we might say, oh, well, what we want to do is we want to get you on LinkedIn or whatever, right? They might be saying, well, yeah, but I've heard that, I don't know, I think there's something that doesn't click for me there because I think we're going to be missing out on this, or this. And we thought, wow, I didn't see that coming. Well, now you can, because if we just think about what each of those 5 questions entails, whichever energy type that they've got the most of, they're pretty likely to respond around that question. It's like we knew the FAQs before they even asked them.
Right.
And then as long as we do the other things well, they're going to naturally ask questions anyway. You want people to be well informed before they buy. So it's not like we ignore the immediate need to get more patients and the appropriate marketing strategy for them and their town and so on and so forth. But this big question is like, this is the iceberg that sits underneath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if that doesn't get satisfied, you can answer the other ones really, really well, but they're going to go, something's not right here.
Yeah.
And that's what's not right for them. And so what I'm suggesting is we just want to know what those questions are and serve those really well. And the same then, now we can come back to us. Like you said, all of us business owners and marketers, we have the same thing going on. So we might be operating from 1 or 2 of these energy types, answering that question really well for us. The question is, how well are we doing it for our clients, customers, prospects? And what kind of business are we creating? Nick and I have worked with lots of people who they might get to a certain level of success, but then they find they weren't really, they didn't create the business and the lifestyle that suited them particularly well. Even if they made a lot of money and they're going, what's going on here? Why isn't this working? And so what can happen is we self-sabotage because we're trying to test and get back to a better answer for that question that we really want to get satisfied in our mind. And you've probably seen examples as of people that you've met over the years.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So ultimately, you talked about the attraction that you generate and how much better you feel about that.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you go to a physical networking meeting and you spot somebody, you go, wow, they just seem to have some attraction going on. It's because they got the clarity and they're really comfortable in their skin, aren't they?
Yes, yes, exactly.
And that's not a woo, that's just fact. You go, gosh, I wish I had that level of confidence. And you say to them, oh, wow, could you speak about, your business journey? And they go, oh, sure, I could.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're an introvert, because they have the clarity and the confidence and they're comfortable in their skin. And that's why these kind of polarity-based things kind of can be a bunch of hoo-ha sometimes.
Yeah.
You really want more than anything, you want clarity and you want to be aligned, because then other things, like you said earlier on, they start falling into place, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah. That's, I can't, and it's really hard for me to, I guess, express how I didn't believe it was critical. I did not, that's what's so crazy is I had no idea how important it really was. So for those that are watching and listening, I mean, this is, it's unbelievably critical because, and I guess to put it, in a practical term, like for myself, and I think we alluded to this a little bit earlier, is I was having a little bit of an internal wrestle about what what I wanted Link Sherpa to be about. And, obviously for businesses, you have to, the business has to, it's not a nonprofit, it has to generate income. I mean, I'm very fortunate in that I already have a successful business and, Connect Dingo back here. But for kind of my side hustle, which I kind of said what I really like is I like, the people aspect. I like working with people. I like helping people. I like training people. I like coaching people. What does that look like? And for me, it was, how can I help people the most? And I thought about, creating products that are actually going to help them, right? But what this has really done after we kind of went through the process is it helped me really clarify that to where I was able to really see clearly, it's not about creating products that people can buy. I can actually take it to a different place. And that was, the evolution of the Slack group that I'm, this community. It was about community, right?
Yeah.
So, and so I think that I hope I don't sound too out there, but what ends up happening, and I was actually in this session a couple days ago where I was talking to this guy and he said, he said, I really, I have to make a living. I understand that. I've been at this for a while. When really all I want, he was a practicing Buddhist. He said, all I really want to do is go on a Tibetan mountaintop and meditate, but that doesn't pay the bill. So how do I kind of meld that with, what I have to do on practical terms, to where I'm not in conflict with my true inner desire and, need as what he felt was a need as a person and stuff like that. So I think that's really important because what the symptoms, if we talk about symptoms,
Yeah.
his symptoms were, start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, buy a product, look at it, try, maybe try half-heartedly to implement it, and then say, oh, that's not for me. Let me look for something different. Or, not put any effort or work into the business to really generate anything. So it's kind of this perpetual self-defeating prophecy, if you will. It was like these behaviors that were sabotaging himself, but they came from, and I relate to that because I had wrestled with that, but it comes from that place of, I think, your, I don't know, true self, your personality, who you are as a person. I think that all has to be, it has to be aligned. I mean, at the risk again of sounding woo-woo, you can't be like a Bernie Madoff person unless you are that's the heart and the root of who you are, right? You can't be a shyster unless it's a heart or root at your heart. Because what'll happen is there's going to be a red flag in your brain that's going to say, I can't do that.
Yep.
But then again, there's going to be those types that say, no problem, yeah, that's just like, it's natural. It's just like, breathing air.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So you have to be, you do have to be aligned with who you are and your personality types. And I think that's where your work comes in so critically, because once you have identified that, not only for yourself, but how to provide that for, other people. I mean, you're now in alignment. It makes a difference. Yeah, it's huge.
It is, Gloria, and it's, you and I know, put a lot of care into trying to keep things really grounded and practical and real. We're really big at that. Even though things can be very inspirational. I mean, years ago, I was working with a couple of friends here in Scotland, and what we realized is we wanted to give people practical information, so we called it grounded information, but we wanted to also give them uplifting inspiration at the same time. Because frankly, if all we operated on was a robotic kind of facts, it'd be pretty boring in life. And I've yet to meet many people who can operate on zero kind of inspiration. It's kind of almost not worth bothering, right?
Yeah.
But of course, if we just float up here in inspiration land, we don't have the grounded information and the practicalities, we're stuffed.
That's right.
And so when it comes to, you're talking about these symptoms. I'm sure, like me, you lose track of the number of people who you meet them at networking events or whatever it might be, and you go, oh, well, what do you do? And in a heartbeat, you kind of know whether they're really cleanly aligned or they're going,
That's right, yeah.
They either stumble or they give you the scripted version, you go, wow. Or they give you the highly kind of technical thing that nobody else is going to understand. Where if I kind of get a sense I already like them and I kind of feel like there's a business I kind of like the look of it anyway, I'll joke with them and I'll go, wow, that sounds pretty cool. Could you tell it to me in English, please?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Just kind of lighten it up with a bit of humor, because it's highlighting an issue that if they were truly aligned, it'd be easy to tell the story.
Yes.
And so that's one of the tells, if you like. Yeah. But like you say, another sort of big set of tells is they just struggle to get going because they can't get the motivation, they can't stick with it, or they can't finish the job on key things. It's like, why am I struggling with this? Because it maybe just ain't you. Because people gravitate, they see kind of Shark Tank, or over here it's Dragon's Den, and they go, whoa, so entrepreneurs should look like those people. Well, that's just typically a lot of wood energy and maybe a couple of others at most. So trying to be them, even if everybody was wonderfully ethical, that's a bad idea to be somebody else.
Right.
Right? And then there's a bunch of books out there that kind of say, follow your bliss and you'll be all happy and wealthy. No, that's just too glib. No, if we just try that, we might just be broke because we're all on the mountain. I've often thought, yeah, it'd be pretty cool to be sitting on a rock on a Himalayan village meditating, but like your friend says, that ain't going to pay the bills.
Right.
So we remain true to ourselves, practical, and have a real business and have enough inspiration where we actually care and show up and keep doing it. Like that commencement speech at Stanford that Steve Jobs gave. He says, you got to really care about this stuff or you won't stick around.
That's right, yeah.
That's essential, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you got to put those three things together, and people will get if you're not your real self really quickly, won't they?
They do.
And yet how many of us have got pulled off center, whether we went to work in the corporate world or whatever it was, or we bought somebody else's product and we tried being that thing or that person and it just wasn't us. And people just kind of inside themselves or visibly, they'll look at you and they just go, no, it's not working for me here. Then your soul feels a bit crushed. And you go,
I think that's kind of the, one of the things that happen is you feel like beaten down.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way. What it does to your psyche is not good.
That's it. And then you go, well, hell, how do I fix it?
Yeah.
Because I keep trying these things. I don't know what to do next. Because nobody ever, they might say, well, just be yourself. You go, oh, great. Well, if it were that easy, I'd have done it already, wouldn't I?
Yep.
Which is why we come back to the 5 energies gives us a much faster and simpler way of going, oh, that makes sense for me. That explains who I am. It tells me things about myself that I didn't realize already. There's no point looking at our resume and going, oh, well, I studied accountancy. That's who I am. No, you're not. That's just a thing you learned.
Right. Right. Exactly. So how, in practical terms, how would somebody learn about, kind of their deeper personality, purpose, and all that stuff? What are some of the steps that would be involved if someone were to say, watching this video and going, yeah, this sounds fascinating. What do I do?
So I would say the first thing to do is we have a free online personality test. And by the way, there is no upsell there.
Right. That's true. I can attest to that. I can.
Yeah, absolutely. And you didn't get hit with a bunch of emails afterwards, right?
Right.
We've got a friend in Germany he's been an online marketer for about 8 years now, and he calls us email criminals because we hardly ever send out emails.
Right. That's so true. Right. Mm-hmm.
But at least in advance. Mm-hmm. You go online to 5institute.com. And on that page, you will see a lovely video with Nicholas Haynes, who created the Vitality Test. He and I met, let's say, 10 years ago, and I've been his strategy and kind of content and marketing midwife now for 10 years and business partner. And so he explains what it's about. You can click the button and get the Vitality Test for free. And it gives you a graph on one page. It shows you kind of which of the 5 energies is showing up, and then a report that walks through what is it? What does it mean to you? How does it show up with some actual life case studies of people like Richard Branson, Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, and so on and so forth? You go, oh, right, that makes sense. And then you can ask yourself, well, how is that showing up for me? So that would be kind of thing 1 is to do the test. Thing 2 is go through and get an initial sense of, does it make sense?
Yeah. Thing
number 3, I always like things in 3, just get in touch with me if you want, and I will happily jump on a call, get a sense of, is there kind of some initial questions I can answer? If we decide we want to work together, well, we can figure that out too. But in an initial call, I will not do a sales pitch. I don't do it that way. Mm-hmm. We just mutually, if somebody says, wow, could you help me? I'll go, okay, let's have another chat, and we'll walk through how that might work in practice. So we keep the 2 separate. So hopefully that's kind of nice and clean.
Yeah.
And what we could do, Gloria, is under this video, I'll just post we can post a link to the Vitality Test.
Yep.
And we can post a link on how to get in touch with me as well.
Yeah, perfect.
Back to this thing about people will read us on all kinds of levels, right?
There we go, back to that. Yeah, that's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, it came to me as you were doing such a great job of describing that, because all this stuff to me is like they're great resources to work with, right? Mm-hmm. And we learn from it. We can hopefully put that to use immediately, really. So one of them is side by side. Let's see you meet 2 people at a networking event. I'll just make it a physical one because we can all relate to that a bit more immediately. And we'll just pretend that as far as we can kind of make out in the conversation, they're both equally skilled, equally experienced in whatever the thing is they do, mm-hmm. right? But one of them seems to be like that. It's just their natural game. And the other person is kind of like they've acquired that and they've kind of learned it, but they're not at home in that skin. Which one are we going to be much more likely to be attracted to and want to work with?
That's right. The person that it just seems like it's a natural thing for them.
Yep. And it's not even a close contest, is it?
That's right. Yep.
Right. So that's thing 1. Thing 2, to quote Dr. Seuss, is which one do you think we would gladly pay more money to?
That's right. The person that it just seems like that it's natural for them. They elude more confidence, and it's more of who they are.
That's it. So, in case you're kind of running this kind of set of questions in your mind and you're going, yeah, but does this help me pay the bills?
Yeah, that's right.
Hugely, because when you show up and you just, they say the guy, but the woman, whatever, and you're the person, they go, well, you're just, wow. You become much more like the only alternative in their mind, because honestly, try differentiating in this day and age, because let's not kid ourselves. There's a lot of people doing most things.
Yeah.
To be truly absolutely unique, forget it. That's a myth that went away a long time ago. What you do want to do, though, is stand out genuinely and ethically in such a way that people go, you are super, super highly attractive to what I'm looking for, and I'm not kind of seeing those other ones. And that, more than anything else, is not about features, it's not about copywriting, it's about what's really in here that clicks in such a way they go, yep, you're the one for me. And the more we step into that space, we are actually going to generate identifiable skills and traits and features of attraction that people could actually write them down on a piece of paper. Well, they're really good at this. They seem to get the knack of that. They just get me more than other people. That last one, I get that all the time. I'm sure you do too, Gloria. So that I ask people when I'm working with them on their kind of brand positioning and also how they package what they do and how we write that up in nice, compelling, but genuine copy, is what do people thank you for routinely? And they tend not to think about that stuff.
Right.
It might start off with, well, he's a good accountant. No. Anybody could have been doing that. What is it that uniquely about you that they thank you for? And then we struggle because we want to be modest, and that's okay. But when that stuff starts showing up, you really do stand out. And when you stand out, you get more attraction, you get more business, and you can also charge what you're worth, which solves a lot of business problems very, very neatly without you working harder, without you stepping over the ethical line and feeling weird about it. You don't have to do that. And by the way, without you having to attract clients, you go, oh God, I really wish I didn't have to work with them. I wanted to work with these other people instead. This is how we solve problems the smart way and stay 100% ethically aligned and work with other people who are ethically aligned. That's what I see from it, and I know you do too. Yeah,
excellent. So this has just been fantastic, and we've been going very long, but that's okay. So just everybody, Matthew, say the website to take the test again, and then reach out to you. No hard sell. It's just if you want to really get a sense and learn what this is all about. Very critical. It's the 5 Institute, the number 5, the letter.
It's spelled out 5, F-I-V-E, 5institute.com.
5institute.com, F-I-V-E. Okay, great. Yeah. Great. And then we'll put a link on where to go ahead and how to reach out to you. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And just, I probably should have mentioned it. When I've given kind of public presentations, Gloria, one of the things I realized is a bit of a numpty after the first few times is I would start speaking without even realizing I should have introduced myself, or why the hell should we listen to this guy?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So very, very briefly, I've been doing this with people around the world for almost 10 years now, literally dotted around. I'm not pretending I've done it for 10,000 people, but literally I've got clients like in every continent apart from Antarctica, and even including marketers who say, wow, this is stuff we've never learned from anybody else. And I'm not saying it because I'm, some kind of amazing Superman. It's because I've been gifted learning this stuff, being business partner with Nick. We've grown up together in the last 10 years using this with all kinds of practical situations. And, we do live and breathe and do our best to walk the talk. And when we work together, Gloria, we were co-creating this stuff together, and that's the way I work. And so I don't want anybody I don't want to give the impression that I'm saying, wow, I'm up on this pedestal. No. We're all here together trying to learn and work and help each other. Yeah. And this is how I get paid, is helping people do that. And you've got wonderful skills and experience and the things I've learned from you and what you're building now. And it's all good. That's the spirit in which we come together, right?